your leadership experience, on-campus involvement in your resume and job search. So the Career Center is a resource for you on campus. We offer one-on-one advising, career assessments, resume reviews, mock interviews, lots of workshops, presentations. So on that note, we come out to student organizations all the time. So if your organization wants a specific presentation at one of your meetings or something like that, definitely spread the word. We are available to do that. On-campus interviews, student employment, mentoring, job shadowing, any of these topics we can talk about in one-on-one sessions, or you can attend our networking events, presentations, and things like that. We're located in Chestnut Hall, Suite 103 on the first floor next to the eye doctor. Our phone number is the easiest way to schedule appointments. Our front desk team has access to all of our calendars and they can just get you on there right away. If you have other questions, you can always email me. We do have our career advisors divided up by college, so it's by whatever your major is. So I specifically only work with students in the College of Education and the Neighborhood School of Journalism. So I might not be your actual advisor, but you can still ask me questions about this workshop if you want to. So we're talking about transferable skills. So if you look up what that means, these are various definitions that kind of come up on Google. So skills that are developed in one situation you can transfer into another, functional or versatile abilities that you can use in different problem-solving or task-oriented situations, interdisciplinary abilities. A lot of times they're referred to as your soft skills. So I do have a worksheet as one of the handouts, so we don't really have to take a lot of time to do this. There's not a lot of people here, but if you just take a minute to look over the list of skills on that worksheet and circle the ones that you know that you have acquired through jobs you might have had, but also specifically the organizations that you are a part of on campus. And then there's a spot on the back too for you to write in other skills that you know you have that might not be on that list. So on the list, how many have you been circling a lot?
Yes, but I can totally say I can improve on all of these.
Yeah, so that's a good starting point to recognize. I know a lot of students, especially if they don't have a lot of work experience, they tend to downplay a lot of the experiences they do have on campus, and they're like, well, I don't know how to make a resume because I really haven't done anything yet. But even if you haven't done anything yet, a lot of times when you look at that list of skills, you're like, oh, well, I have this skill, I have this skill, I have this skill. So it kind of helps you feel maybe a little more positive about writing a resume or talking about your skills, even if you haven't had a lot of work experience.
Can I ask you a question? I have a question about trust building, especially in organizations which are business oriented. It is so difficult to work with people whom you can't trust or who don't trust you. And there are many barriers and stereotypes, especially if you are like a foreigner, and that becomes a difficulty in itself. But then if you are trying to convince people, how can you have some skills to do that?
I would just work on it as much as you can, just building relationships. I'm sure there's other workshops and things on campus that you can go to practice those skills. I know there's something called Toastmasters in the world that you can do.
Where is it?
I don't know. I just know it exists. So that's an organization that you can practice public speaking skills and things like that. So I would just say join activities where you can practice those skills. I don't really have advice per se on how to get people to trust you, but just being more welcoming, friendly, displaying customer service skills. To write that on a resume, you could say something like, overcome cultural barriers to build successful working relationships with colleagues and fellow students, or something like that, to display that you have that skill. But as far as building it, it just probably takes time and effort. So just keep working at it. Other transferable skills that you might have already based on your involvement on campus: being a team builder, kind of goes along with building trust in teams, being adaptable, supportive, being able to meet deadlines and solve problems, delegating tasks, motivating others, setting goals, creating new ideas. So all these things, as you can see, they're very vague, broad skills. It's not oh, do, because this is what employers look for. So speaking of employers, NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and they do a job outlook survey every year. So the latest one basically provides this information. If employers are looking for skills on a resume, what are those? And you can see the top ones with close to 78% are both leadership and ability to work in a team. So those are the top two things they look for. And then written communication, problem solving skills are also in the 70% range. Strong work ethic, analytical skills, technical skills in the 60% range. So those kinds of things are what employers look for on a resume. They don't necessarily look for your GPA right off the bat. They don't look for what was your major. They don't look for do they have work experience. It's not those things that they're honing in on. It's leadership, working in teams, communicating. So those are obviously skills that you can get from being involved on campus. So we want to highlight that. When employers are forced to choose between two equally qualified candidates, they'll choose the one with leadership skills over the other one. So very important to have leadership experience and then also know how to communicate that so that employers can see you have leadership experience. Academic major and high GPA are determining factors, but again, they're not the top factors. So demonstrating your skills, I know you kind of mentioned LinkedIn briefly before this presentation, and certainly the Career Center can do a full hour-long presentation all about LinkedIn. I just have one slide about it here. So there is a skills section on LinkedIn, which you can see the photo on the right. And so this is a great place for you to actually list your transferable skills as well. So you can list any of the skills on the previous slides that we talked about in this section. You can get people to endorse you. So this is another good way to demonstrate to employers that you are skilled in these areas by getting those endorsements. So professors, coworkers, fellow members of your organization are all great people who you can ask to endorse you on LinkedIn. But also keep in mind that you want to stand out. So UNT has almost 40,000 students. How many of those are involved in student organizations? Probably a ton. How many are in your same student organization? A lot. How many are in your same major? You know, at the end of the day, you're all going to have pretty similar experiences on your resumes. So you want to make sure you are thinking about how you're setting yourself apart. Especially on LinkedIn, the top 10 global buzzwords are listed here. So motivated, passionate, strategic. If you're using those types of words on your resume, chances are other people are as well, and you might not be standing out as much. So you need to be very intentional with your word choice on LinkedIn, on your resume. All of these materials are a way for you to market yourself and brand yourself. So be very aware of that. So no buzzwords, basically. When we talk about resumes, we usually encourage students to use a brand statement at the top or kind of a summary of skills statement. So these are 3 examples of what that would look like. However, the first one uses every single one of the buzzwords on the previous slide. So you can see it sounds really nice, sounds very professional, but it's not super specific to you as like an individual person. It's just using nice professional sounding words. But chances are, like I said, it's going to kind of blur and blend and sound a lot like somebody else's if you're not really being specific to you and being intentional with your word choice. So the bottom 2 don't use any of those buzzwords, and they are also very professional and they come across well. So you can see when you're writing a brand statement, you can either be just kind of vague and talk basically from your student organization experience, talk about being a team leader, a good listener, being productive and collaborative, and you can just really make it all about your soft skills, or you can put a little bit more about specific work areas that you want to be in. So this one talks about being a marketing professional. It still talks about those soft skills like meeting deadlines, focusing on results and things like that, but it talks about it a little more closely related with the actual industry. And so this is where you would include something like that on your resume. You would just have your heading, and then the very first thing is this brand statement, which you can feel free to label whatever you want. So this one's labeled professional profile. You can say summary of qualifications. You call it brand statement if you want. I feel like that's kind of awkward though.
What's a brand statement? Sorry.
That's just this, right? Oops, here. So it's kind of your little like elevator pitch on paper, sort of. It's like if I were to brand myself, talk about myself, get you hooked and want to actually look at my resume in 4 sentences, how am I going to do that? So if you Google like personal brand statement, that's usually what it's called. But like I said, I might not label it as that on your resume. You might title it differently. So moving on from there, continuing to talk about your resume, you don't want to limit your experience just to paid employment. A lot of students really get that in their head, like I'm putting work experience, like, well, I didn't get paid at that job, so I don't want to put that. Employers, frankly, do not care if you were paid for it or not. They care about the experiences you got. So if it's a volunteer position, it's weighed equally as a job that you got a full-time salary at. They don't care how much you got paid, they just care about the skills that you got and that you're going to bring into their company. So don't limit yourself to just paid employment. Think about internships you might have done, service learning or volunteer work. Sports or athletics are huge. A lot of people really feel like, oh, well, that's just kind of a social, or that's like a fun activity. I'm not going to really highlight that on my resume. But employers love that. They look for it. If you have the capabilities to work in a team during team sports, leadership, take direction from a coach, things like that, those are great transferable skills that they want in a candidate in any field. Class projects, student organizations, study abroad experiences, anything like that you can really capitalize on your resume. And truthfully, if you have a lot of this information, you don't even need to have a work experience section. So continuing to talk about resumes, one of the handouts that you received has an example kind of resume template on each side. So one side shows the functional format and the other shows the chronological. Chronological is the one listed on the right-hand side of this slide, and it's usually what most people think about when they think of a traditional resume. You have some kind of work history or employment section, and then you would list your first job or your first involvement, student organization, and then underneath that you have all the bullet points about what you did with that organization or that company. Then you move on to the next one. However, you can see that by doing it that way, everything is categorized simply based on like where it happened instead of what the skill is. So you could have customer service experience really scattered all over your resume. Same thing with leadership. So that's where the functional resume is really great to use. It organizes it based on your skill. So you actually have 2 separate sections. One for employment or involvement, where you would list those out, and then no bullet points go under there. You simply move them up here. So in theory, it could be the exact same information that you just put it in a different format, or the functional resume really gives you a lot more flexibility to focus. If you don't have any work experience, then it helps highlight your involvement a little bit better, I think. So 9 times out of 10 for college students or young professionals, I really recommend the functional resume, but it's really a personal choice about which one you prefer.
About negative experiences, because we do learn from that as well. So let's say I work with a student board, and there was skirmishes, and you learn through the event, but then you no more with that student board. So, but it's a very important experience.
Right.
How would you write that?
So if you've been a part of a student organization before and maybe it didn't pan out the best, but like you said, it's a learning experience, so that's something you can bring into a job. I would say it depends if you want to list it on your resume. If it was only for like 1 year and you have a lot of other experiences that you're currently involved in, maybe you wouldn't want to list it. And then you would just wait in an interview. If they ask you about, tell me about a time where you experienced a conflict, then even though it's not on your resume, that's still a perfect opportunity for you to draw from that experience and talk about it. But if you were involved in it for like 2 or 3 years, I would say that's a lot of time commitment that you put into it to then not list it on your resume. And you can definitely talk about it in an interview. So it kind of depends if you put it, if it's only like 6 months or a year, like I'd say it's more likely that you could just go ahead and leave it off because it might not be that impressive because it doesn't show a huge commitment to it. But if it was longer than that, you might want to leave it. So how you could list your involvement on campus if you were going with that functional resume route. You would just create a leadership and involvement section, and then you would list out each of the organizations that you're a part of. A lot of students experience having multiple titles or multiple roles within an organization, so how you can handle that is to just lead with the name of the organization and the dates of involvement, and then following that you could indent or bullet point out what your specific different positions were. So this is just kind of a visual to show you how it looks laid out on there. And then for a functional resume, you notice that because we didn't put any bullet points here, we moved that into the professional skills section. So this is a real life person's resume, so it doesn't have anything to do with the previous slide. But if it did, then the bullet points underneath creative thinking, writing, and relationship building would be from advertising club and these other involvements. And then a small employment section at the bottom if you have some work experience.
So, sorry, you have the bigger bullet points, so that's the creative thinking, and then within that you specify where you got that.
Exactly. So for example, creative thinking, this bullet could have been from the advertising club, this one could have come from the academic honors society that was listed, and then this one could have come from, I think it was a sorority involvement I had on the last slide. So that's where it's like you're really honing in, like I got creative thinking skills from 4 or 5 different things that I was involved in, so I'm not going to list it under each one or spread it all out on my resume. I'll just simply list my involvement, and then bullet points will all go with skills in this professional skills section. So there's a lot of benefits to using that functional resume. You can see laying it out this way makes a lot of sense.
I have another question. So if somebody has a disability, because it's a situation if you want to or not disclose
Right.
to the employer, then what is your suggestion?
If you have a disability and you do want to disclose it to the employer, I probably wouldn't recommend listing it on the resume itself, because I guess you never know who's going to see a copy of it, and you might not want everybody to know about it. So during the application process, I believe there's like a separate page that you could include where you write about it. You could include it in the cover letter, or you could simply like submit your application materials and then like wait to hear back until you get an interview. And at that point, when someone calls you and says, you know, we looked over your materials and we want to interview you, that would be a great time to bring that up, and especially if you need accommodations for the actual interview process, bringing it up then with that person. Does that answer your question? So then on your resume, if you were going to go the chronological route, you would obviously then put the bullet points with the involvement. So this just shows you would still label it leadership and involvement, but then after you list the organization in your title, instead of moving on to the next one, you would just put all the bullet points here. So obviously they demonstrate different skills, but they go with the same organization. So just a different way of laying it out. And then if you had a different role, like obviously you weren't president the whole time, so then down below that you would put your next role, or you could just say member and have a few bullet points about what you did as a member then. So as you can see by these examples, you really don't need to have work experience. You only get 1 page for a resume. If you're involved in 3 or 4 student organizations, doing something like this for each of the organizations or laying it out the other way is going to pretty much fill that page. So it's very possible to highlight all of these great skills, capitalize on your involvement, and not even ever have to really have a paying job. So those bullet points that we've been talking about, no matter where you put them, if you go the functional or chronological route, you still want to make sure that they are very specific. So they're bullet points, but they're also commonly referred to as performance statements. So if you're Googling, you can type in performance statements. And what you want to do is follow the SOAR method. So you have your statement, so you want to let them know what it is you actually did, and always start with the action verb. So you don't need to say responsible for organizing group meetings, you just say organize group meetings. You also want to think about how often this is going on. If you're talking about inventory, like that's probably not happening every day. Maybe you take inventory at the end of the week or the end of the month or something like that. Like let me know how often this is going on. As far as amounts go, adding numbers. So it might be number of members in your organization. It might be number of profit that you got at a fundraiser or something like that. Like add some actual tangible numbers. And then the result piece is really very important because your resume shouldn't be focusing on the actual task that you did. It should be more focused on the outcome that you achieved through that task. So that's what that result piece is talking about. What happened? What was the impact? Why did you do this? So instead of just saying you organized group meetings, you could say I organized weekly meetings for 35 members, which provided everyone with up-to-date information regarding upcoming events and activities. So that last portion of the bullet is the why piece. You're not just organizing meetings, you're also informing your members of information. So for every bullet point that you write, it should follow this method and cover these items. And make sure when you're writing your bullet points, you actually emphasize the skills that are relevant. So this is where the whole idea of having a different resume for every job you apply for comes into play. It doesn't have to be a drastically different resume, but you just go over the one you have and look over the bullet point and think to yourself, is this actually relevant to the job I'm applying for? If it's not, you might just want to go ahead and delete it, or you may go ahead and revise it so that it is relevant. So for example, if you were applying, let's say you work at Subway, and now you want to work at Quiznos or something. I don't even know if those still exist, but it's a sandwich making shop and another sandwich making shop. So having a bullet point that says, like, I made sandwiches might be relevant if you're applying to another job where you are making sandwiches. They might want you to know how to do that. But if you're applying to work at Subway, and now you're applying to work on campus here at UNT or something, maybe as a student assistant in the front office. You're not going to be making sandwiches as a student assistant, but you're probably going to be talking with students and dealing with people every day. So instead of saying making sandwiches for customers, you can just delete that bullet point and replace it by saying that you built rapport with however many customers each day in a fast-paced environment and worked collaboratively with your colleagues or something like that. So that goes to show you that you need to always constantly be thinking about relevancy on your resume. You ask the question about, should I include the student organization if I'm not in it? Or sometimes people say, how far back should I include jobs? The number one thing to think about in all that is relevancy. If the student organization is specifically relevant to this job, then heck yeah, even if you were only in it for 6 months or a year, you should probably be putting it on there because it relates. If it has zero to do with this job and you're only in it for a year, like maybe then you take it off. So always be thinking, is this employer going to care? Is it relevant to this job? And then also some just additional tips on those bullet points that we've kind of gone over. But this has examples. So think about collective accomplishments as well. So it doesn't just have to be you as an individual all the time. If your team met a certain goal, you can talk about that. Last year, the Career Center received an award from our division for collaboration. So I can say that I built relationships with faculty on campus, which contributed to the Career Center winning the collaboration award for the year 2015. So I didn't personally win that award, but I can still talk about that on my resume if I'm talking about like my office or my team's accomplishments. Being specific. So again, like I said, you don't need to say assisted, responsible for, take those words out, and then add some numbers in there. So contribute to a 15% increase in retention is way more powerful than just, oh, I assisted with some after-school tutoring. So it's really all about the wording, the phrasing, the marketing. How are you selling your strengths? And again, using numbers. So trained a new employees. That's so vague, so boring. It does not give me any details at all. But I see thousands of students' resumes all the time, and a lot of them look like that. Trained new employees, that's all they'll say. Instead, authored a 195-page new employee handbook, which was used corporate-wide to train more than 250 staff members. That is way more powerful. Wow, 195 pages, you must have put a lot of work into that. That many new staff members looked at it, how impressive. So it's really a difference of how much of an impact you're making on that employer when they're reading your resume. This is also important why it's important to keep up with things and not just wait like 4 years later. So as you're in this student organization, if you have a fundraiser, maybe check in with the president or something and say, hey, how much did we actually raise in that fundraiser? I want to get that down. And it doesn't have to be an exact dollar, but you can say in one of your bullets, raised over $300 for this or something. So if you wait until 2 months before you graduate to then write all these bullet points, it's going to be harder to remember all the specifics. So kind of keep a running notebook or a tab or a document where you just put information in that you can pull from for this. And the last couple of slides I have just briefly mentioned when you're in an interview. So your resume alone is not going to land you the job, so that's great to put all this on your resume, get them hooked, really impress them, but then the next step is going to be verbally communicating these skills and experiences, which most likely will happen in an interview stage. So you need to practice actually talking about your student organization experience with a friend, colleague, family member, something like that. Ask for feedback, especially people who aren't in your organization and don't know anything about it. It's good to ask them if you can practice in front of them and say, did you understand, what my organization does and what I do? If they're like, oh yeah, that sounds really cool. You did a great job explaining it to me. Then maybe okay, that's a good way to phrase it. The other thing is that the Career Center offers mock interviews. So with your assigned career advisor, you can schedule a full 1-hour appointment where we ask you questions and you practice responding to us, and we can give you tips on what went well, what you can improve on, things like that. So it's a great opportunity for you. So for interviews, these are pretty much the questions you're going to be asked no matter what field it is. They're always going to ask these. Tell me about yourself. What is your greatest strength? What is your weakness? Why should we hire you? Tell me about a time when something happened. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? So these types of questions, you need to be thinking about practicing, not just these 5 or 6, also plenty more. You can Google, you can find resources. What are common interview questions? Glassdoor has information on specific companies' interviews that you can look at. So lots of great resources out there, but practice is so important. Another thing that I advise, that I learned from personal experience when you interview, is that you obviously can't control the questions they ask you. So if there's something that you really want them to know about, but it doesn't come up, have that written down so that you can work that in to your questions. So like I mentioned with the Career Center and the Collaboration Award, and I work with people all the time, maybe that's something I really want to stress, and they ask me these questions, and I'm like, well, that didn't really come up, I guess, in these questions. So I have to find a way to work that in, or at the end, maybe hope they ask me, is there anything else you want to tell us? And I can look at my list and see, okay, I crossed off these 4, so I already worked those into questions. So here's the last one that I want them to know. So be thinking about that in advance, what do you actually want them to know, and try to work that into your questions instead of spur of the moment, oh, let me think about it here, have it planned. If they ask me about weaknesses, this is what I'm talking about, this is the experience I'm going to tell them about, and just kind of have it planned in advance. So as you think here, you have an example, you can chime in. Can you think about, for maybe one of these questions, how you might answer it by talking about your organization involvement specifically?
Yes. I am the president of my organization, which encourages yoga meditation on campus.
Okay, great.
And my greatest strength is integrity, because I think if I want to do a task, I want to do it the same way, whether or not somebody else is looking behind. And if I think that this task is for a greater good, then I would do that. No matter if I have to even incur some personal sacrifices for it. So within my weakness, and this is what I wanted to ask you. So when I know that I do tend to jump to conclusions, and I know that given a sticky situation, if I get emotionally charged, then I'm not having that political, tactical, the tactical ways I would have otherwise have dealt with the situation. And maybe when I know that somebody is within an organization who is probably higher up, or somebody who is a peer, they are kind of using spy ways to get around. But then how would I then, at that time I get mad at them and try to resolve the situation. in my own way, like how I think it should be done. But I know that's not the best way.
Mhm.
And working on it to see how I can overcome that.
Right.
But then, I mean, it's great to know that that these things I have done, but it's not that I will be consistently doing the same thing, because given a challenging situation, my performance would now vary.
Mhm.
So, how do you?
Yes. So, what is your weakness, or what's your greatest weakness, or tell me a weakness you have? They might phrase it different ways, but essentially answering that question. A lot of times people have the idea that, oh, you should frame it as a strength, which is not the way you should answer that question. So, if you've ever heard that before, don't answer it that way. So you shouldn't say something like, oh, I'm just so committed to my work that sometimes I just stay late, and my personal life suffers because I'm just so dedicated, like, oh, it's such a weakness, but really that's what you want or something. Like, that's not how you answer that. So kind of what you were saying already is a perfect way to respond, where you talk about how you are overcoming it, or that you recognize it's a weakness. Like, that in itself is already huge. You have the self-awareness to know this is a weakness I have. You're not like so egotistical and like, oh, well, I really don't have many weaknesses. I guess if I had to pick one, I'd say I'm just overly dedicated. Like, that shows me you have zero self-awareness of yourself, because everyone has weaknesses. So choose a real weakness that you have. Talk about ways that you work to overcome it, or an example where maybe that weakness was displayed but you learned from it. So something like that. So an example that you can use, and of course you always want to pick a weakness that's not like 100% needed to do this job. So if it's like a customer service job and you're like, well, my weakness is talking to people, so how I overcome that is every single day I pep talk myself to come to work and talk to people. Like, that's kind of a red flag. Like, if you're in customer service, that's too extreme of a weakness to talk about. But for example, a real weakness that I have is punctuality. I'm terrible with being on time in the mornings. I'm not a morning person. I hate that I have to be at work at 8 o'clock every day. So if my boss never cared and never paid attention to me, I'd probably sneak in at night every day or something. I'm just really terrible at it. So in a job interview, if I really wanted to tell that as my weakness, in this current job I have, but we don't take student appointments till 9 o'clock, so really it wouldn't affect my job if I came in a little bit late at 8:15 every day. So it's not a critical thing. So I could talk about that as a weakness, and then I could also say how I overcome it. So my weakness is I'm just really not a morning person. It's hard for me to get to work on time in the mornings, but how I overcome that is I listen to books on tape in the car, and so I know that when I get in the car, I'm excited to hear a book on tape. Or I schedule important things, or I already have a to-do list ready for me. Before I leave the day before, I write a to-do list so I know what I have to get done. And in the morning, I going over that list in my head, and okay, I need to get there to get these things done. Whatever it is, this is how I make myself get there at 8 o'clock. And it's oh, okay, you recognize that that's a weakness. It's not totally crucial to this job if you're 5 minutes late every day, but great that you have come up with some ways to really make it a priority to get here on time. Perfect. So something in that realm is a good way to answer that.
But if my disability is with decision making,
Mm-hmm.
at that time, if it is emotionally charged situation, most jobs require that. Okay,
So maybe you don't list that as your weakness, and you pick a different one to share. If you do want to talk about decision making or conflict, you could just say, because I don't have a lot of experience in this area, I've noticed that in times of conflict, I have a hard time making decisions as I normally would. And so something I've learned to help me in that is to not make the decision alone, but to instead seek support from a supervisor or someone higher up in the organization to aid me in this process or something like that. That's a good way to answer that. So, I think this is the only slide I have on interviewing. Basically, you can weave in your experiences in any of the questions that ask you. So, I know you've asked a few questions along the way, but do you have any other additional questions or comments about any of these topics that I've gone over today?
these will be available online, right?
I can send it to Kathy.
Would you say will it be online?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yeah.